Lone Cowboy moved into an abandoned house, then discovered an Apache girl who already lived there. He thought he'd found silence, shelter from dust and debt. But when he opened that creaking door, her shadow was already waiting inside, hungry, unafraid, holding a knife and a question. Two strangers under one roof, both chased by different ghosts. How long can a house built on secrets keep them from burning each other alive? The wind pushed the door open before he did. Inside, the cabin smelled of wood ash and rain-soaked leather. A kettle sat cold on the hearth, one cup still damp. He stepped in slow, boots silent on warped boards. His dog followed, tail low, sniffing at the corners like the place remembered something it shouldn't. He said nothing and only breathed, the kind of breath that carried miles of dust and no promise at the end. A strand of hair clung to the chair back, black, coarse, fresh. He froze. From the shadows, a soft sound, not fear, not warning, just breath, then movement, bare feet on the floor. A figure stepped out from behind the chimney, small, thin, wrapped in an old blanket that wasn't hers. The girl didn't run. She looked at him the way fire looks at water, waiting to see which one gives first. He didn't draw, didn't move. His voice came quiet. "This house was empty," she answered in rough English. "Empty for you," the dog growled once, uncertain. She didn't flinch. The knife in her hand stayed still, pointed down, as if even that metal waited for permission. He nodded once toward the hearth. "You've been here long?" She looked past him, toward the storm beyond the door. "Long enough to hear what men want." The wind slammed the shutter, a single crack that made both of them turn. He said, "I only came for walls." She said, "Then take half." He studied her, the dirt, the tremor, the steady eyes. Something in them wasn't pleading. It was measuring him. A raindrop hit the iron stove, hissing like a warning. He set his rifle by the wall slow. "I don't steal what breathes," he said. Then he reached into his coat, pulled out a half loaf of bread, and placed it on the table between them. The knife lowered. For the first time, she blinked, not in fear, but disbelief. Outside, thunder rolled through the valley, shaking the ground like an answer neither of them had asked for. The bread sat untouched between them, softening under the steam that drifted from the kettle she'd left half-boiled. He broke the silence first, pushing the loaf an inch closer. "Eat," he said. Her eyes didn't move from him. "You eat first." He tore a piece, small enough to prove it wasn't a trick. The crust cracked, the sound sharp in the still room. He chewed slow, dry, and nodded toward it again. Her hand twitched before she reached for it. Dirt had settled into the creases of her palm, and her fingers trembled when they brushed the crust. Hunger fought pride in her eyes until pride blinked first. She ate. His dog lay down near the door, ears pricked, half guard, half ghost. The cowboy looked around the room. The walls were patched with hides. A small bedroll lay in the corner, thin as a shadow. Beside it, a bowl of river stones arranged in a perfect ring. Not random, placed, deliberate. He pointed toward it. "You make that?" She nodded once. "For dreams," he frowned. "Keeps them in or keeps them out?" "Both," she said. "Depends what comes looking." He let the words settle. Then he reached for his canteen and set it on the table. "Water's clean." She took it, drank, and wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. Her voice softened just enough to sound human again. "You from the north?" He nodded. "Too many debts up there. Too many graves down here," she said. Thunder grumbled through the floorboards, making the dog stir. He rose and shut the door tight. When he turned, she was staring at his rifle against the wall. "You shoot for money?" she asked. He shook his head. "Only when money shoots first." Her lips curved, almost a smile. "Then you won't last long here." He sat, elbows on knees, voice quiet. "Didn't come to last." A moment passed, the kind that could end or begin something. Then a sound broke it. Distant at first, then closer, metal striking wood, boots sloshing through wet earth. She froze. The bread dropped from her hand. He stood, rifle back in his grip. "You expecting someone?" She shook her head once, slow. "They come for the boards." "What boards?" "The ones under us," she said, eyes on the floor. "Old place. They buried things here." The dog barked low, teeth bared toward the door. Outside, a voice called "Mail," sharp, echoing between rain and wood. "State Survey, open up." He turned toward her. "You didn't tell me." "Didn't know they'd come back." The handle rattled. A second voice. "Anyone squatting, come out." "House marked for claim." He stepped between her and the door. "They armed?" She nodded once. "Always." He exhaled through his nose. "Then we talk." The door creaked open before he reached it. A man stood framed by grey light and drizzle, coat plastered to his back. He carried no badge, but the paper in his hand held more power than a rifle. "Name?" the man asked. The cowboy didn't answer. The official scanned the inside, eyes stopping on the girl. That one registered. The cowboy's jaw tensed. "She lives here," the man smirked. "Not on record." He stepped forward, but the cowboy didn't move aside. Their boots almost touched. "This cabin's been abandoned since the war," the man said. "Company owns the land now." "Company don't sleep here," the cowboy replied. The man's tone cooled. "Company owns where you stand." The girl's breath came faster. The dog growled again. The man turned his head slightly toward her. "So you speak." She said nothing. He sighed, tapping the paper against his palm. "You've got 1 hour to clear out. We torch it by sundown." The cowboy's voice stayed steady. "You light it, you burn her." The man shrugged. "Not my concern." Then, as if it were a simple matter of business, he tucked the paper into the frame and stepped back into the rain. The cowboy followed him to the door. "You tell your boss." "He already knows," the man interrupted. "We're just here to make it official." And then he was gone. Boots splashing back toward the wagon waiting beyond the fence line. Silence hung again. The only sound was the girl's breathing and the wind pressing against the shutters. She whispered, "They'll come back with fire." He stared at the paper nailed to the doorframe, the ink running in the rain. "Then we'll be gone before they do." She looked at him like someone who'd heard promises before. "Where?" she asked. He didn't answer. He just turned to the table, tore the bread in half, handed her a piece and said, "Where the smoke stops." Outside, lightning flashed, and in its brief light he saw it, a second figure by the wagon, watching the cabin even as the others drove off. The shape didn't move. When the thunder followed, it was already gone, but the wet footprints remained, leading straight to the back door. The wind shoved at the cabin again, harder this time, as if something wanted in. He moved slow toward the back door, rifle half raised. The girl followed, blanket clutched tight around her shoulders, the dog close behind, its growl low enough to tremble through the floorboards. Outside, the night had gone still, only the drip of rain from the eaves and the hiss of wet earth. He pushed the door open an inch. The hinge groaned. Nothing but darkness and the smell of pine sap and smoke. He waited. Then soft footfalls. 2, 3. A shuffle, retreating. He stepped out into the yard. "Who's there?" Silence. Then a voice. Thin, almost childlike. "Don't shoot." He turned the lantern toward the sound. A boy stood by the fence, barefoot, soaked to the bone, clutching a canvas satchel. His face was streaked with mud and fear. The girl whispered, "He's one of ours." The cowboy lowered the rifle an inch. "What's in the bag?" The boy looked between them, shaking. "Letter," he said. "They sent it before they burned the others." "Who's they?" the cowboy asked. "Company men," the boy said. "They came at night, took the horses, said this cabin wasn't safe." The girl's eyes flickered, something between anger and knowing. "They found the line." The cowboy frowned. "What line?" She pointed toward the ridge behind the cabin. "Old trail, cuts through the hills. My people buried tools there, silver, maybe iron. The company thinks it's a mine." The cowboy exhaled. "So they're not burning houses. They're burning proof." The boy nodded. "They said by morning the wagons come with oil." Thunder muttered over the mountains again. The cowboy said quietly, "Then we don't wait for morning?" He went back inside, gathered his coat, his rope, and a box of cartridges. The girl still hadn't moved. He looked at her. "You staying?" She said, "If I run again, they win." He looked at her longer than he should have, then turned to the boy. "You can ride?" The boy shook his head. Horse won't carry me far." The cowboy handed him the rifle instead. "Then you guard what's left." He slung the lantern and stepped toward the ridge, the girl falling in beside him. The dog padded close, silent. The climb was slick with rain, trees bent under wind. Somewhere below, the creek roared against the stones, swollen with runoff. The girl spoke low. "You don't have to do this," he answered without turning. "Neither do you," she said. "Then why are we?" He didn't answer. Maybe he didn't know. At the crest, he raised the lantern. The ridge stretched black and endless. The soil shone wet, scarred by fresh shovel marks. A half-buried post leaned crooked, metal wire still wrapped around it. She crouched, brushed away mud. Beneath it, something glinted, a strip of stamped iron, company letters barely legible beneath rust. "Survey marker," she whispered. "They staked the land already." He looked toward the valley. Far below, faint orange lights trembled through the rain, torches moving in a slow line. "They're coming early," he said. She rose. "We can break the markers," he nodded. "They'll just set more." She looked at him. "Then we take the proof." She dug at the mud where the post had stood. The earth gave way easily. Beneath it, a wooden box, old, splintered, sealed with pitch. She pulled it free, breath ragged. The cowboy brushed the surface clean. "What is it?" She met his eyes. "The reason they want this ground." He pried the lid open with his knife. Inside, flat stones carved with markings, neither of them recognized, layered in oilcloth. The air that escaped smelled of iron and rain and something older. He reached in, turned one of the stones over. Beneath the grime, faint lines formed a spiral, ending in a shape like an eye. The dog whined. The girl's face had gone pale. "That's not mine," she said softly. "That's before all of us." He wrapped the stone again, shut the box. "Whatever it is, it's not safe here." From the valley, a horn blew, short, twice. The sound of riders spreading out. "They've seen the light," he said. They doused the lantern. Darkness swallowed the ridge. Below, fire sparked, a line of torches curving toward the cabin. The girl whispered, "The boy." He grabbed her wrist. "Move." They slid down the slope, mud and stones rushing around them. Wind howled through the trees like something alive. At the base, the cabin came into view, its single window glowing faintly. The boy stood inside, holding the rifle, waiting. The cowboy shouted, "Down!" The boy turned too slow. A gun cracked from the dark, shattering the lantern glass. Light burst, died. The dog lunged forward, barking. The girl screamed his name. Then, silence, broken only by rain. The cowboy reached the door first, kicked it open. The boy was on the floor, alive but shaking, the rifle smoking beside him. A shadow lay just beyond the doorway, a man down, hat gone, torch rolling into the mud. The cowboy looked out into the dark. More boots splashed, more voices rising. He pulled the boy to his feet, shoved the rifle into his hands again. "They're not done," he said. The girl's voice came from behind him. "What now?" He looked toward the ridge, where the firelight crept closer. "We show them what they buried," he said. A gust tore through the doorway, carrying sparks into the room. The girl glanced at the box on the table, the markings seeping through the wet wood. "What if it's not meant to be seen?" she asked. He met her eyes, mud streaking his face. "Then they shouldn't have dug it up." Outside, the fire spread along the grass like a fuse. The ridge began to glow. The night split open with firelight. Smoke rolled downhill, thick and low, glowing red in the rain. The cowboy grabbed a blanket, soaked it, and threw it over the window. "Keep low," he said. The boy obeyed, trembling, clutching the rifle like it might vanish if he loosened his grip. The girl moved to the table. The wooden box sat there, wet, heavy, breathing steam through its cracks. She touched it once, as though it might answer her. "It's humming," she whispered. He didn't turn. "That's the storm." But he knew she was right. The air around it buzzed, a low pulse beneath the thunder. Outside, the riders shouted orders. The sound of hooves tore through the mud. The cowboy pushed the table against the door. "They'll try the back first," he said. "How many?" the boy asked. "Enough." he answered. The girl knelt near the hearth, pressing her palm against the stones. Her voice was soft, almost a chant. Fire burns up. Smoke blinds down. Earth hides what's still breathing. The cowboy looked at her, and not in doubt, but in calculation. You ever used that before? She didn't look up. Only once. It worked long enough. He stared a moment longer, then grabbed his satchel and dumped its contents. Rope, cartridges, 2 nails, a flask, a torn map. He took 1 bullet out, weighed it in his hand, and said quietly, "Then we buy enough time for 3 to leave." The boy shook his head. "I won't leave." "You will," the cowboy said. "You'll find the ridge trail and ride the creek south. There's a bridge by dawnlight." "And you?" the boy asked. "I'll keep the fire busy." The girl stood, eyes fierce now. "You don't fight fire with bullets." He gave her a grim half-smile. "No, you fight it with distraction." He pulled a tin can from the shelf, filled it with lamp oil, and tore a strip from his coat. The girl understood before he spoke. "You'll make them chase light," he nodded. "They follow what burns." The first shot hit the doorframe, splintering wood. The boy flinched. The cowboy whispered, "Now." He threw the flaming can out through the side window. It landed in the grass, burst like a sunrise. Voices outside shouted, splitting into confusion. He loaded the rifle. "Go!" The girl grabbed the box and the boy's arm. Together they slipped through the rear window, landing in the mud with the sound of rain and rushing blood. The dog followed, ears flat, teeth bared at the smell of fire. The cowboy turned once, looked around the cabin that had almost been a home, then grabbed his hat and stepped into the doorway. "Over here!" a voice yelled from the dark. He raised the rifle. 1 breath, 1 pull. The closest torch went out. Chaos broke. The girl and the boy crawled through the ferns behind the fence, the box heavy between them. The rain came harder now, drowning everything but their heartbeat. Behind them, the fire hissed, and the shouting turned to panic. "Will he live?" the boy whispered. The girl didn't answer. She turned once. The cabin was a red blur in the distance, the man's silhouette against it. Then lightning tore the sky open. For an instant she saw the impossible. The fire curling around the cabin like it hit a wall, bending away, snuffed in a spiral of smoke. The earth itself seemed to pull breath. The boy stared. What was that? She clutched the box tighter. It woke up. The thunder rolled again, closer, heavier, but different this time. It wasn't echo. It was hooves, riders cutting from the ridge, circling. "They're herding us," she said. The boy pointed to the creek. "There!" They ran, stumbling through brush and water. The box thudded with every step, as though something inside shifted its weight. Behind them, the voices rose again, angry now, afraid. The girl slipped, fell into the mud. The boy turned back, helped her up. The lid of the box cracked slightly open on the fall. A faint light shimmered through the seam. Green, cold, unnatural. The boy stared. "What is that?" She slammed it shut. "Not for us." They reached the creek. The dog splashed across first, tail low. The girl and the boy followed, breathless, shivering. When they reached the far bank, she turned. The ridge glowed orange now. The cabin was gone, not burning, but buried in a curtain of smoke too thick to be real. The boy whispered, "Did he make it out?" She said nothing, only stared. A figure stepped through that smoke, tall, walking slow, hat gone, coat torn, rifle in one hand, something else in the other. Not fire, not light, just movement. The boy gasped. "It's him!" She squinted, but then lightning flashed again, and the figure was gone. Only the dog's ears twitched, then it growled, deep, uncertain. The girl turned toward the valley. "We can't stay near it." The boy nodded, clutching the box tighter. "Then where?" She looked up toward the distant black line of trees. "Where it's quiet," she said, "before it finds a voice." A crack echoed behind them. One last shot through the rain. The boy froze. The dog barked once, sharp. The girl spun and saw the bullets strike the creek, inches from the box. Ripples spread outward, glowing faintly in the dark. The light from inside the box flickered once more, and answered. The water hissed where the bullet struck. For a breath, everything stilled. Even the rain seemed to wait. Then the creek began to glow, not bright, not sudden, but deep, like light rising from below. The boy stumbled backward, clutching the box. "It's burning." "It's not fire," the girl said. Her voice trembled. "It's remembering." The current twisted around their boots, thickening, pulling against their legs as though the earth beneath had turned to breath. The dog barked once, then growled at the water. Its reflection shimmered, then vanished, swallowed by light. The girl grabbed the boy's shoulder. "Drop it." He shook his head. "We can't." "Now!" she shouted. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, the box moved. It slid from his hands, slow at first, then sank straight down, vanishing without splash or sound. Silence. Only the rain. Only their ragged breathing. Then, from the center of the creek, a circle of bubbles rose, one by one, until the surface broke open with a pulse of air. A shape lifted just beneath the water. Stone. Carved. Curved like ribs of some buried thing. The girl whispered, "It's older than any name." The boy's eyes widened. "You knew?" "I heard stories," she said. "My grandmother said the earth remembers what it buries." The cowboy's voice came from behind them. "Looks like it remembered too much." They spun. He stood on the far bank, coat soaked, face blackened with smoke, rifle still slung but untouched, alive. The girl's mouth opened, but no words came. He stepped forward, boots sinking in the mud. "Whatever that is," he said, nodding toward the creek, "it's calling them back." She turned and saw it. Far off, through the rain, torchlight climbed again from the valley. Not fast but steady, a line of riders, quiet, deliberate. The boy whispered, "They shouldn't know where we are." "They don't," the cowboy said. "Something else is guiding them." He stared at the water. The glow had dimmed now, pulsing slow, like the beat of something buried but not dead. "Can it stop?" he asked. The girl shook her head. "Not if they keep digging." He looked at the boy. "Then we need to make sure they don't." "How?" the boy asked. The cowboy turned toward the ridge. "We send it back." The girl frowned. "You mean bury it?" "No," he said. "Deeper." A flash of lightning split the sky, and for an instant the three of them stood like figures in an old legend, man, child, and woman, framed against a world trying to erase them. Then thunder answered, shaking the ground beneath. The boys shouted over it, "If we go back, they'll catch us." The cowboy met his eyes. "If we don't, the ground will—" They moved before the words cooled. Upstream, the creek bent toward a gorge, steep, narrow, old. The girl knew the way by instinct. The path twisted between cedars and shattered rock, marked by bones of fallen trees. The dog ran ahead, sniffing, barking once when the scent of smoke rose again. Halfway up, they stopped beneath an overhang. The cowboy leaned against the rock, breathing hard. "You could have left me," he said. The girl answered, "You gave bread." He looked at her, just a glance, brief but full. Then his gaze drifted to the boy. "You sure you didn't keep anything from that box?" The boy shook his head. "Only the map." He reached into his coat and pulled out the torn scrap the cowboy had dropped earlier, the one marked with black lines and faded circles. But now, under the dim light, the ink bled differently. The same spiral from the stones had begun to bloom across the paper, dark and wet, like it was alive. The cowboy took it slowly. "Well," he muttered, "looks like it followed us." The girl touched the map. "It's showing where it wants to rest." "You trust that?" he asked. "No," she said, "but it's the only thing that's speaking." They followed the lines through the trees until the land opened into a hollow. There, between moss-covered stones, the earth seemed soft and as if waiting. The cowboy knelt, pulled his knife, and drove it into the soil. Steam hissed from the cut. The boy whispered, "Is that breathing?" "Could be," the cowboy said. "Could be waiting to eat." The girl knelt beside him. "If it's calling, we answer. That's the rule." He studied her face. No fear, only memory. "Then say it," he said. Whatever you have to say." She placed her palms on the ground. Her voice was low, almost gone in the rain. "Sleep, not silence. Earth, not ash. Keep what's yours." The soil shifted beneath her hands. The glow from the creek dimmed, folding back into the ground like the tide. For a moment, everything felt still again. Air, rain, heartbeats. Even the dog stopped breathing. Then came the sound. A deep, slow crack from beneath, like something turning over in its sleep. The boy clutched her arm. "You woke it," she said. "No, I told it who we are." But the cowboy was watching the ridge. His face had gone still. "What?" she asked. He nodded toward the tree line. "We're not alone." Through the sheets of rain, dark figures stood. Not company riders, not soldiers. They moved quiet, barefoot, watching from the edge of the woods. The girl rose slowly. "They're not men." The cowboy cocked his rifle. "Then what are they?" One stepped forward, face painted with ash, eyes reflecting the faint green of the dying light. The boy whispered, "They came with the earth." The wind carried a single sound, like breath drawn through a flute made of bone. Then all the torches on the ridge below went out at once. The forest went utterly black, only the sound of rain on leaves, and that breath through bone. The cowboy steadied his rifle, eyes narrowed. The girl raised a hand. "Don't!" "They're moving," he said, "so let them." The boy crouched low, gripping the wet grass. "What do they want?" The girl didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the shadows between trees. From the darkness, figures stepped forward, 4, then 5. Bare feet, paint smeared down their arms in spirals, ash sticking to wet skin. Their faces were calm, not hostile, just old. One carried a torch that burned green instead of orange. It didn't smoke. It hummed like the box had. The cowboy whispered, "Never seen a flame do that." The girl's voice came low. "It's not flame." The lead figure stopped 10 paces away, torch raised. The others stood still, silent. Then, in a voice that sounded like wind through rock, he spoke. "Who opened the sleeping mouth?" The girl bowed her head slightly. "We didn't mean to wake it." "You carried its breath," the man said. "You moved it from rest." The boy clutched the edge of the map. The ink spiral still glowed faintly. "I didn't know," he said. The figure's eyes shifted to him. "Child of hunger, none of you know." He looked at the cowboy next. "And you, son of empty laws, why walk with what's buried?" The cowboy didn't flinch. "Because men with badges burn what they don't understand." The silence that followed was long enough for the rain to soften again. Finally, the figure lowered his torch. "Then you may stand." The girl glanced at him. "You believe us?" "No," the figure said. "But the ground hasn't opened yet." He turned slightly, pointing toward the hollow. "What it called for is not you. It's the Iron Men, the ones who write their names in dust." "Company," the cowboy said. The man nodded. "Their fire walks before their shadow. When it reaches here, this mountain will close its mouth and all above it will fall." The boy whispered, "Fall." The man looked toward the ridge. "Like paper on wind." The girl stepped forward. "We can stop them." The man's eyes softened, almost sad. "You can't stop hunger with mercy." Then he turned, walking back into the trees. The others followed, vanishing into the dark. Only the green torchlight remained for a moment. Then it flickered out, leaving smoke that smelled like iron and rain. The cowboy finally exhaled. "Well," he said quietly, "I suppose that was our warning." The girl looked at him. "He wasn't warning us. He was giving us time." The boy's voice shook. "What if they come before it falls?" The cowboy checked his rifle. "Then we finish what we started." They built a fire from what little dry wood they could find. The flame struggled against the rain, snapping and spitting. The girl crouched near it, drying her hands. "You think he meant it? About the ground falling?" "I've seen rivers eat towns," the cowboy said. "Seen storms carve roads out of mountains. Earth don't ask permission." The boy looked into the fire. "Then why fight it?" "Because," the cowboy said, "sometimes the fight's all that keeps you standing long enough to be remembered." They stayed quiet for a while. The fire flickered between them. Not enough heat, just enough light to see the fear in each other's faces. Then the dog barked once, sharp, urgent. The cowboy rose instantly, scanning the tree line. Far off, down in the valley, a glow spread, orange, steady. "Lanterns," he said. "They're coming up the creek." The girl stood. "Then we're running out of time." She grabbed the boy's arm, the dog circling her feet. The cowboy kicked out the fire, smothering the last ember. "Back toward the ridge," he said. "We lead them to what they're digging for." The climb was slower now, the ground slick, air thick with mist. Every step felt like sinking. The boy stumbled once, nearly dropping the map. The cowboy caught him. "Hold tight. That paper's the only guide left." The girl looked ahead. "Not paper," she said softly. "It's breathing, too." The cowboy frowned. "What do you mean?" "The ink's moving." He took the map from the boy. Under the dim light, the spiral on the page pulsed faintly, then began to spread. New lines branching out like veins, reaching toward the mountainside. It wasn't drawing a path. It was opening one. From somewhere beneath, the ground gave a long, low groan. The dog whined, stepping back. The boy clutched his ears. "Make it stop." The girl whispered something in Apache, short rhythm like a prayer or a warning. The sound eased. The earth went still. The cowboy exhaled. "What did you say?" "Nothing meant for people," she answered, "but it listens." They reached the ridge just as dawn started to push grey through the mist. Below, the company riders formed a line, torches lit, wagons behind them, black smoke curling up from oil drums. The girl's jaw tightened. "They mean to burn it all." The cowboy's grip tightened on his rifle. "Then we show them what it costs." He looked at the boy. "You stay behind me. No heroics." The boy nodded, eyes wide. The girl stood beside the cowboy now, both framed by the faint light breaking over the ridge. The first echo of hooves reached them, steady, deliberate, a march of certainty. The cowboy looked once at her, at the storm clouds curling again above them. "For you said the ground listens," he said. "What if we make it choose a side?" Before she could answer, the first wagon's torch tipped, spilling fire into the wet grass. The flame should have died. It didn't. It spread, faster than wind, crawling uphill, orange bleeding into green. The rain sizzled against it, and the smell of iron filled the air. The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "It's not their fire anymore." The cowboy raised his rifle, but his eyes weren't on the riders. They were on the earth itself, trembling under his boots. The ridge cracked once, deep and low, like thunder from the roots of the world. Then came the sound of something rising. The ground split like it was exhaling. The sound wasn't thunder. It was deeper, older, wet with memory. The cowboy stumbled, steadying himself against a cedar trunk. The boy screamed over the roar. "It's breaking." The girl grabbed his wrist, pulling him toward higher ground. "No, it's waking." Chunks of earth peeled open, sliding into the gorge where the creek had been. The stream turned white with foam and steam. From beneath the split, faint light poured upward, green, then gold, then black again, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. The cowboy turned to the girl. "You said it listens. Tell it to stop." "I can't," she shouted. "It's not mine to command." The first wagon tumbled, horses screaming as the slope gave way beneath them. Riders yelled, voices drowned by the rumble. The boy covered his ears, tears streaking through the ash on his face. "They're dying." The cowboy's jaw set tight. "Then move before it takes us too." They climbed toward the ridge. The dog darted ahead, then stopped, growling low at something unseen. The girl caught up, staring past the animal's line of sight. Someone's there. Through the smoke, a figure emerged, the same man from the forest, his face streaked with mud and ash. He held no torch this time, only an old spear capped with bone. "You shouldn't be here," the cowboy said. The man tilted his head. "Neither should the company." The ground shuddered again, a roar that sounded like iron tearing. He pointed toward the glow below. "You opened its lungs. Now it breathes what you brought." The cowboy's eyes narrowed. "And you knew this would happen." The man didn't blink. Knowing and stopping aren't the same thing. The girl stepped forward, trembling but steady. "Help us stop it." The man looked at her, long, slow, sorrow in his eyes. You can't stop a hunger that remembers being fed, he said, but you can starve it. How? The cowboy asked. Return what you took, the man said. The girl frowned. The box sank. Not all of it, he replied. His gaze turned toward the boy. He carries the last breath. The boy stepped back. I didn't take anything. The man pointed to the satchel hanging from his side. It's inside. You carried the key that keeps its mouth open. The boy pulled it open with shaking hands. Inside was the torn scrap of the map, the spiral pulsing again. I didn't mean to. The girl took it from him gently. It doesn't matter what we mean. Only what we return. The cowboy stepped between her and the shaman. You think giving it back will stop that? He pointed toward the valley, the land collapsing, riders screaming, wagons vanishing into the smoke. The man's eyes didn't leave the fire. It'll choose whether to stop. That's all you can ask of something older than God. The cowboy exhaled hard. Then where? Where the first breath rose, the man said. He pointed toward the mountain's peak, where lightning curved around a single black stone. Up there. The girl nodded, clutching the glowing map. Then we climb. They started upward. The slope turned slick under their boots, every step echoing like a heartbeat through the mountain. The boy slipped, catching the cowboy's arm. Why is it moving? It's trying to breathe free, the cowboy said. And we're standing on its ribs. They climbed until the air turned thin, the rain colder. The glow from the map brightened the path, veins of green light flickering through cracks in the rock. Halfway up, the dog stopped again, this time not growling, but whining low, ears flat. The girl crouched beside it. Something's ahead. The cowboy aimed his rifle through the haze. Movement? The answer came from a voice, quiet, human, terrified. Don't shoot. Out of the mist stumbled a man in a torn company coat, face grey with soot. He collapsed onto his knees. Help me, please. The cowboy didn't lower the rifle. You alone? The man nodded weakly. The ground swallowed the rest. I heard screaming under the dirt. The girl frowned. Then why didn't it take you? The man shook his head. I was carrying this. He opened his coat. Inside was a small charred fragment of metal with a burned mark that matched the spiral. The girl's eyes widened. You stole its seal. I didn't know, he whispered. It was just in the dirt. I thought it was gold. The cowboy exhaled through his teeth. Well, you bought yourself a curse, friend. The man's voice cracked. Can't you make it stop? The girl stared at him. You made a wound in the earth. It's bleeding to be healed. Suddenly the wind shifted, sharp, metallic, hot. The man's eyes went wide. What's that sound? The girl looked up. It's calling the rest back. From below, faint shapes began to rise through the smoke. Not riders, not spirits, but something in between. Figures of ash and bone, their bodies glowing faintly from within, like embers wearing flesh. The boy whispered, They're walking out of the ground. The cowboy chambered around. Then we'd better finish before they get here. The shaman's voice carried faintly through the wind from below. Remember, feed it its own breath. Seal it with earth, not fire. The girl nodded once. Keep them back, she told the cowboy. He gave a grim smile. Ain't that always my job? She turned toward the peak, map glowing brighter now, leading her up the last ridge. The boy followed close behind, clutching her coat. The cowboy took his stance at the cliff's edge, rifle raised as the first ash figures reached the slope. They moved slow, silent, eyes like dying coals. He whispered under his breath, Come on, then. The first one reached him. He fired. The bullet went straight through, bursting it into dust that fell like snow. For a heartbeat, it seemed to work. Then the dust moved again, crawling back toward the ground. The cowboy reloaded. That's new. From above, the girl's voice echoed faintly through the storm. Keep them busy, he shouted back. Wasn't planning on inviting them to dinner. The next wave climbed faster, arms outstretched, fingers dragging sparks across the stone. The mountain roared again, louder this time, not breaking but breathing. And as the light from below met the storm above, everything in between man fires and earth began to tremble like it was remembering what it meant to be alive. The mountain's voice rolled over them, deep, alive. The sound of stone remembering how to move. The cowboy kept firing, each shot echoing off the cliffs, but the ash figures didn't fall. They burst, scattered, and gathered again, like the storm was shaping them back together. The boy shouted, "It's not stopping them!" The cowboy reloaded. "Never does." He fired again, but it slows them down. Up on the ridge, the girl climbed faster, the wind clawing her hair across her face. The glowing map pulsed stronger, veins of light weaving into her skin. The boy struggled behind her, gasping for air. What if it doesn't work? She didn't look back. Then we give the earth our names instead. Below, the cowboy backed toward the cliff. The dog snarled beside him, snapping at the shifting dust that tried to take form again. One ash figure reached for him, its touch like ice and heat at once. He swung the rifle, cracking the barrel across its chest. The form burst apart into black flakes that turned to steam. From behind, a voice shouted through the wind, the shaman again, climbing from the mist. "Don't fight their shapes. They're only mirrors." The cowboy turned. "Mirrors of what?" The shaman raised his bone spear. "Of what you fear most." And in that instant, the next figure rose, and the cowboy froze. It had his face. Same eyes, same scar under the jaw, but its expression was hollow, like a reflection carved out of smoke. The boy saw it too. "It's you." The cowboy lifted his rifle. "No, it's what I was." He fired point blank. The echo cracked the air, and the figure disintegrated. The shaman nodded once. "Good. Now it knows you're awake." Up above him, the girl reached the final slope. The peak loomed, a black stone, smooth and wet, with cracks glowing faint green from within. The map's light synced with the stone's pulse. She laid it down gently at the base. "This is where it began." The boy leaned in. "What do we do?" "Return it," she whispered, "but not with hands." She pressed her burned palm to the map. The glow seeped into the ground, threads of light sinking into the cracks like veins reuniting with a heart. The earth trembled, then sighed. Below, the cowboy felt it, a shift underfoot, less violent now, more like breath leaving a body. The ash figures froze, their forms unraveling in the wind. The shaman lowered his spear. "It's listening." But then the mountain screamed. The girl fell back, clutching her head. The light flared, too bright, too fast. The boy shouted, "You said it would stop." She gasped. Something else woke up with it. The cracks on the stone widened, and from within, fire bled through. Not green, not gold, red, alive, furious. The light shot upward, striking the storm clouds. The air filled with sparks. Down below, the cowboy stared at the sky. "Tell me that's normal." The shaman's face was pale. "That's not earthlight. That's judgment." The boy grabbed the girl's arm. "What do we do?" She looked down the slope at the cowboys, the ash figures, the shaman, then back at the black stone bleeding flame. "We stay," she said. The boy's eyes widened. "Stay." She nodded. "Someone has to speak for it. Someone who touched both sides." She turned toward the peak again, stepping into the flame's edge. The fire didn't burn. It pulled, like wind through cloth. Her hair lifted, eyes reflecting every color of the storm. "Tell him to run," she said softly. The boy shouted down the ridge. "She says to run." The cowboy shook his head. "Not without her." The shaman grabbed his shoulder. "If she speaks to it, she's the bridge. You stay, you break it." The cowboy clenched his jaw. "I'm done leaving people behind." He started climbing, one hand, one boot, steady through falling ash and shaking stone. The dog barked after him. The boy screamed, "You'll die." The cowboy didn't look back. Maybe, but not silent. Lightning split the peak. The stone cracked open, spilling molten light that carved rivers down the slope. The girl stood before it, both hands raised, her silhouette framed in the storm. "Sleep," she said again, her voice breaking. Not silence, just sleep. The flame surged, swallowed her, and then stillness. The cowboy reached the ledge just as the light died. The girl was gone. Only the black stone remained, sealed smooth again, faint smoke rising. He dropped to his knees, breath ragged. The shaman and the boy climbed after, faces wet with rain and ash. The shaman whispered, "She closed the mouth." The cowboy's voice was barely sound. "Then why's it still shaking?" Because beneath them, far below, something else had begun to move. Slower, heavier, like a second heartbeat answering the first. The shaman's eyes went wide. She woke the rest of it. The cowboy turned toward the valley, where the ground now rippled like the sea. He whispered, "Then we better learn to swim." The first cracks turned into a rhythm, like a drum beat from under the ground. The cowboy gripped the stone. The tremor pulsed through his palms. Below, the valley twisted, trees bending, streams reversing course, dust spiraling upward. The shaman steadied himself against the cliff. "It's not dying," he said. The boy stared at the valley. "Then what's it doing?" The shaman's eyes narrowed. "Remembering its shape." The cowboy looked at the sealed stone where the girl had vanished. His jaw tightened. "If it remembers her, it might listen." "She's part of it now," the shaman replied. "A voice in the dark." A low hum spread through the air, not sound, more like a vibration in the ribs. The dog whined and pressed itself against the cowboy's leg. Then, faintly, the hum turned into a whisper, not in English, not fully in Apache. It was older, wet, slow. The boy shivered. "It's talking." The shaman whispered back, almost reverently. "It's asking who stays." The cowboy looked toward the ridge, the last stretch of mountain leading upward to the storm's eye. He spat into the mud. "Guess we better answer." They started to climb again. The boy followed close behind, his small hands gripping rock slick with rain. The path narrowed until they could only move one at a time. Halfway up, the boy stopped. "She wouldn't want you to die," he said. The cowboy didn't look back. "Ain't about wanting. It's about finishing what she started." The shaman called from below. "You think the earth bargains with endings?" The cowboy answered. "I think it respects them." At the top, the air changed, thin and electric. The storm circled above in a perfect spiral, the same pattern that had burned on the map. The cowboy stepped into the center of it. The rain there didn't fall. It hovered like the world had paused. The shaman raised his bone spear and drove it into the ground. The earth hissed. Steam poured up. "Now it listens," he said. "Speak." The cowboy knelt by the stone. His hand trembled as he touched it, still warm from the light that had swallowed her. He closed his eyes. "You took her," he said quietly. "But she gave herself. So take me too, but leave the boy." The mountain's hum deepened. The shaman's voice shook. "You don't offer twice to an old god." The cowboy didn't move. "Ain't offering. I'm settlin' a debt." The boy cried out. "No, she said—" "She said sleep," the cowboy interrupted. "And someone's got to make sure it lasts." The ground opened a hairline crack beneath his hand. Warm light bled through, gentle this time, almost like a pulse. He looked down at the boy. "When you get down there, you tell him she saved the mountain. Not me, not you, her." The boy shook his head. "I can't do this alone." The cowboy smiled faintly. "You can. You already climbed higher than I ever did." The shaman gripped the spear tighter. "Once it takes you, there's no coming back." "Wasn't planning on a return trip?" the cowboy said. He pressed both hands against the stone. The hum became louder, deeper, until his bones rattled. Then quiet. The storm above froze. The lightning stopped mid-flash. The wind fell still. The boy whispered, "Is it over?" The shaman shook his head slowly. "No, it's choosing." A voice rose from beneath the stone, her voice soft, fading. "Don't trade. Just tell it who we are." The cowboy's hands fell away. He knelt back, eyes wide, breath shaking. He whispered, "She ain't gone." The mountain responded, a single deep thud that shook every tree and stone in the valley. Then, all at once, the rain stopped. Silence. Even the thunder held its breath. Then came a faint, human sound. Footsteps on the slope below. The boy turned. Someone's coming. Through the fog, lanterns appeared again. But these weren't company lights. They moved slower, carried by men in torn coats and scorched hats. Survivors. The shaman frowned. They lived. The cowboy rose, rifle still in hand. Maybe not for long. The lead survivor raised his lantern. "You up there, we just want to talk," the boy whispered. "They don't sound like they want peace." The cowboy's jaw clenched. No one climbs a dead mountain just to talk. The survivors spread out, circling the lower ridge. Their boots crunched on glassy stone, hands resting on pistols. One called up, "We saw the fire. Whatever's up there, it's company property now." The cowboy aimed his rifle down. "It ain't property anymore." The shaman murmured, "Don't, you'll wake it again." The cowboy didn't lower the gun. "Then maybe it needs to remember who broke it first." The wind rose again, faint but sharp, slicing between the cliffs like a blade. The boy grabbed the shaman's arm. "It's happening again, isn't it?" The shaman's voice was quiet. "No. This time, it's listening to him." The cowboy took a slow breath, eyes on the men below. Rain began to fall again, not heavy, just enough to darken the stone. He whispered to the ground, "If you're still in there, girl, now'd be a good time." A single drop of green light slipped through the crack in the stone, pulsing once, and then the first survivor fired. The shot echoed like a whip across the ridge. Stone dust burst from the ledge beside the cowboy's face. He didn't duck. He aimed low, fired once, and the nearest lantern went dark. The mountains seemed to flinch at the sound. The hum beneath their feet trembled, faint but aware. The boy covered his ears. "They'll wake it," the shaman hissed. "They already have." Another shot rang out, then another. The night filled with the dry percussion of gunfire and the smell of powder. The cowboy shouted down, "You want it? Come dig it out yourself." The men below fanned wider, trying to climb. Boots slipped in the slick mud. Two fell before reaching the halfway point. The cowboy fired again, not to kill, just to keep them crawling. "Back!" the shaman yelled. "The mountain breathes faster when blood falls." The cowboy snarled, "Then let it breathe." He fired again. The bullet struck a rock, sparking. The spark landed in a crack, still pulsing with green light. And the mountain answered. A sound tore through the air. Half roar, half cry, the cliff shook. The survivors froze, looking up in terror. From deep below, light spilled out like molten glass. The boy screamed, "It's opening again!" The shaman thrust his spear into the ground. "Hold it shut!" The cowboy dropped his rifle, grabbed the boy's arm. "Get back!" The ground heaved once. Then the slope split down the middle, a jagged wound glowing from within. Out of it rose a single column of steam, and a figure inside it. The girl, she wasn't burning, she wasn't whole either. Her outline shimmered like light through water, her skin streaked with ash and gold. Her eyes glowed faintly green. The boy stumbled forward. "You're alive." Her voice was soft, but carried through the storm. "No, but I'm here." The cowboy stepped toward her, rain sliding off his hat. "You shouldn't have come back." "I didn't," she said. "It brought me—" The survivors below stopped shooting. They stared, one dropping his gun entirely. The leader stammered, "What in God's—" Lightning flashed, and the girl's eyes turned bright, reflecting the storm. "Don't use that word up here," she said. Her voice didn't echo. It sank, straight into the rock. The ground rumbled again. The shaman bowed low. "She's not one of us anymore." The cowboy looked at her. Sorrow, awe, disbelief. "What are you now?" Her gaze flickered toward the men below. "Something they made, something they'll answer to." The wind surged, tearing through the valley. Lanterns shattered. Horses screamed. The survivors fell to their knees, shielding their faces. The boy covered his eyes. "Make it stop." The girl turned to him, her voice softer. "I'm trying." The cowboy reached for her hand, but his fingers passed through light. He whispered, "You can't stay like this." "I know," she said. "It's burning through me." The shaman called out, "Then release it. Give it back to the earth." She shook her head. "If I let go, it'll eat everything. Again." The cowboy's voice broke. "Then what?" She met his eyes. "Then you take it from me." He stepped back. "You're asking me to—" Her look stopped him cold. "You said you'd finish what I started." The boy sobbed. "No. She saved us. She'll save more if he listens," the shaman said quietly. The cowboy's hands trembled. He reached for his pistol, slow, heavy. Rain hissed on the metal. "Tell me when," he said. She smiled, tired, distant. "When the wind stops." The storm roared. Then, for a single heartbeat, everything went silent. No rain, no thunder, no breath. The shot cracked the stillness. The light shattered around her like glass breaking underwater. Her body dissolved into the air. No blood, no fall, just a final breath that turned into mist. The boy screamed, "No!" The shaman's eyes closed. Now the mountain sleeps. The glow beneath their feet faded, slow as dying coals. The cracks sealed. The hum disappeared. Only the rain returned. Steady, normal, cold. The cowboy lowered the pistol. His hand shook once, then went still. He looked at the stone where she'd stood. Nothing remained but ash, and a faint spiral burned into the rock. The boy dropped to his knees, crying into the mud. The shaman laid a hand on his shoulder. "She's in the ground now. Let her rest." Below, the survivors began retreating, stumbling through the rain without a word. The cowboy holstered his gun, staring after them. "They'll come back," he said. The shaman nodded. "Men always do." The boy looked up, eyes red. "Then what do we do?" The cowboy glanced at the sealed earth. "Same thing she did." He turned, voice rough. "We stay." The wind rose again, gentler this time, almost like an exhale. Somewhere deep below, a faint heartbeat echoed once. Then again. The shaman looked toward the horizon. "You hear that?" The cowboy's jaw tightened. "Yeah, it ain't over." The rain softened into mist, thin as breath. The mountain was quiet now. Too quiet. No hum. No light. Just the smell of wet ash and the faint trace of smoke that refused to leave. The cowboy knelt where she'd stood, hand on the sealed stone. The mud around him steamed slightly, like the earth was still cooling from her fire. The boy crouched beside him. "It's over, ain't it?" The cowboy didn't answer. His hand pressed harder into the stone. "You hear that?" The boy tilted his head. "What?" He shook his head slowly. "Exactly." Silence stretched. Even the wind seemed to wait. The shaman stood a few paces away, his spear planted in the dirt. "She's gone," he said, "but what she held isn't. It's watching who takes her place." The cowboy rose. His shoulders slumped beneath the weight of rain and guilt. "She didn't ask for this." The shaman's eyes lifted to the sky. "Neither did the land, but both carried it anyway." The boy looked between them. "What do we do now?" The cowboy looked down the valley, the survivors' tracks already washing away in the mud. "They'll be back," he said, "and next time they'll bring more guns." The shaman nodded. "And they'll dig deeper, like they always do." The cowboy turned to him. "Then we make sure they never reach what's buried." The shaman studied him for a long moment. "You'd guard a grave that ain't yours." He nodded once. "It is now." The boy stood, wiping his face with a sleeve streaked in dirt. "Then I'm staying too." The cowboy looked down at him. "Ain't your fight?" The boy met his gaze, steady, older now. Wasn't hers either. For a while, no one spoke. The fog rolled low across the ridge, wrapping them all in grey. Finally, the shaman spoke again. "There's a place east, where the sun burns the sand red. It's where stories go when they die. You'll find food there, maybe peace." The cowboy adjusted his hat. "Don't need peace, need purpose." He looked once more at the stone. "She bought it with her life. The least I can do is keep it bought." The shaman pressed a small carved charm into his hand, bone shaped like a bird's wing. "If it breathes again, this will warm before it speaks." The cowboy tucked it into his pocket. "Hope it stays cold forever." They started down the ridge. The boy followed close, his boots squelching in the soft mud. Halfway down, he looked back. "Think she's really gone?" The cowboy didn't turn. "Depends what you mean by gone." At the base of the mountain, the trees had begun to grow strange, their bark darker, leaves thick with moisture as if the soil had remembered fire. Birds circled above, but none landed. The shaman stopped at the tree line. "This is where my road ends." "The land's quiet here." The cowboy nodded. "For now." The old man smiled faintly. "Quiet don't last long around men like you." The cowboy almost smiled. "Ain't that the truth?" The shaman stepped back into the mist. his figure fading until only his voice remained. "Guard her silence well. It's the last kind you'll ever get." The boy watched until he vanished. Then he turned to the cowboy. "You think he'll come back?" "No," the cowboy said. "And if he's lucky, neither will we." They kept walking. The path wound down toward the valley floor, where the last of the firelight glimmered in pools of rainwater. The dog trotted ahead, nose low to the ground, tail flicking like a metronome. When they reached the bottom, the cowboy paused. The boy followed his gaze to the wreck of a wagon half buried in mud. Its side was scorched, but inside the frame lay a metal seal and the company's emblems cracked clean down the middle. The cowboy picked it up, turning it in his hand. "There's your proof," he muttered. "The law broke itself." He tossed it into the creek. The current took it without sound. The boy whispered, "What'll we tell people?" The cowboy looked at the horizon, where the storm was breaking into thin light. "Tell 'em the mountains slept," he said. "And maybe they'll believe it." He adjusted his coat rifle across his back. The boy mirrored him, wrapping the dog's lead around his wrist. They started west, into land that was open, quiet and heavy with what had just been buried. As they walked, a faint vibration rippled through the mud beneath their boots, soft, steady, like a heartbeat far below. The boy stopped. "You feel that?" The cowboy didn't turn. "Keep walking." "But keep walking," he said again. They moved on until the ridge disappeared behind the fog. Up on the peak, rain pooled in the grooves of the sealed stone. One drop rolled over the faint spiral mark, and for an instant it glowed green. Then it went dark again. Days passed before the ground stopped steaming. The cowboy built a small fire by the creek, careful not to stir the wet ash buried under the mud. The smoke rose thin and white, like apology. The boy sat nearby, turning the bone charm over in his hands. "Still cold?" he said. The cowboy nodded. "Good. Means the world's sleeping." The dog whined, head resting on its paws. The boy scratched behind its ears. "Do you think she'd want us to stay here forever?" The cowboy looked toward the distant ridge, now wrapped in low clouds. "Ain't about wanting. It's about remembering." He tossed a twig into the fire. "People like us, we don't get statues, we get stories. And if no one tells them, they die." The boy stared at the flames. "Then I'll tell it." The cowboy smiled faintly. "Then you'll do better than most grown men ever did." Wind sighed through the trees. The air smelled of pine and old rain. The boy spoke again, quieter now. "When you shot her, did she forgive you?" The cowboy's face hardened. "She didn't need to." She asked, "But you did it." He nodded once. "And I'll carry that weight till I'm dirt." The boy looked away. "She was the only one who didn't want to hurt anyone." The cowboy's voice turned rough. "That's why it had to be her. Folks like her keep the rest of us from turning to stone." The fire cracked. Neither spoke for a while. At dawn, the cowboy packed their things: rope, dried meat, a worn blanket. He looked down the road stretching west, a pale scar through the forest. The boy yawned. "Where we going now?" He adjusted his hat. "Away from men who count land like coins." They began walking again. The forest thinned, giving way to open prairie. Every few miles, the boy glanced back, the mountain now just a faint shadow on the horizon. By afternoon they reached a crossroads, 2 wooden posts, one broken, one still standing. The cowboy stopped there, scanning the distance. The boy pointed west. "That way looks clearer." The cowboy nodded. Clear don't always mean safe. They turned west anyway. As evening fell, they came upon a burned wagon, half sunk, its wheels melted into the mud. The boy crouched beside it, running his fingers through the soot. "Company mark," he said quietly. The cowboy knelt beside him. "They'll keep coming." "Then what's the point?" the boy asked. He looked up at the darkening sky. "The point's not to win. It's to keep standing." A soft sound broke the silence, a low groan. Human. The cowboy drew his pistol, stepping around the wreck. A man lay inside, covered in soot, chest barely rising, company uniform, badge tarnished. The boy gasped. "He's alive!" The cowboy crouched. "Barely." The man's eyes flickered open. "Please," he whispered. "Water." The boy reached for the canteen, but the cowboy stopped him. "Are you one of the ones who came up the mountain?" The man nodded weakly. We were told it was empty land." "Still think that?" the cowboy asked. The man coughed, shivering. "Didn't know what we were digging into. The ground. It screamed." The cowboy's jaw tightened. "You heard it then?" The man nodded again, tears mixing with mud. "It took her. Then us." The boy looked to the cowboy. "We can't just leave him." The cowboy sighed, handed the boy the canteen. "One sip, then we move." The man drank, trembling. "You'll tell them." The cowboy's voice turned flat. "Tell who?" "The company," he rasped. "They need to stop." The cowboy stood, cold eyes narrowing. "They ain't the kind that stops, only kind that runs out of places to ruin." He turned to go, but the man grabbed his boot. "She's still down there," he whispered. The cowboy froze. "She spoke," the man said. "Said the land remembers. Said it's not done yet." The cowboy kicked his hand away gently. "Then pray it forgets your name." He motioned to the boy. "Come on." They walked until the wagon was just a shape in the fog. Behind them, the man's breathing faded into silence. The boy finally asked, "You think he was lying?" The cowboy shook his head. "Men lie to live, but not when they're dying." They reached a bluff overlooking the plains. The last of the daylight burned orange across the grass. The boy set his pack down. "She said the land remembers. What if it remembers us too?" The cowboy stared out at the horizon. "Then we better give it something worth remembering." Wind swept across the field, carrying the smell of rain and iron. The boy lay down beside the dog. "You ever think about going back?" The cowboy's eyes stayed on the west. "Every step." He paused. "But the past don't need me anymore." A faint rumble rolled through the ground, distant thunder or something deeper. The cowboy looked back once, toward the invisible mountain far behind the fog. The bone charm warmed against his chest. He whispered, barely audible, "Sleep easy, girl." The wind rose, gentle at first, then stronger, like breath returning to a sleeping body. The prairie grass bent low, all leaning toward the east, toward the mountain. The boy sat up. "It's moving again." The cowboy didn't turn. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's waking." The sky broke open before dawn, green lightning crawling across the clouds like veins. The cowboy had seen storms before, but nothing like this. The air shimmered, humming low, as if the ground itself was breathing. He stood at the ridge again, boots sinking into the soft mud where fire had once burned. The boy trailed behind, clutching the bone charm against his chest. "It's moving again," the boy said, voice barely louder than rain. The cowboy nodded. "She ain't done talking." From below, a noise rose, faint at first, then sharper, metal against rock, rhythmic, deliberate. The boy frowned. "You hear that?" He did. Shovels, picks, voices, men. The cowboy's eyes narrowed. "They came back." He motioned for the boy to stay low and moved forward through the mist. The dog padded beside him, silent. Down by the creek, the company men had returned, 3 of them this time, lanterns glowing sickly against the fog. They were digging, slow but steady, near the sealed pit. The cowboy called out, calm and cold, "You boys get lost last time." The men froze. One turned, rifle half raised. Another spoke, voice shaking. We got orders. There's something here. Company property." The cowboy's voice stayed even. "There ain't nothing here but graves." The third man spat, nervous. "Then we'll dig up bones if we have to." The cowboy's hand rested on his holster. "You don't want to do that." Thunder cracked overhead. The ground gave a small shudder. Not from the storm. The boy whispered, "She's waking." The nearest digger scoffed. "You believe that savage nonsense?" He swung his pick into the ground. The moment it struck, light poured from the crack, green, bright, pulsing like a heartbeat. The earth groaned. The men stumbled back, faces pale. The cowboy pulled the boy close. "Back!" he shouted. A figure rose from the pit, not flesh, not ghost, but something in between. Her outline glimmered like smoke lit from within. The Apache girl's eyes burned with quiet fire. Her voice came soft but deep, echoing from everywhere. "You never listen." The men fell to their knees, terrified. One stammered, We didn't mean—" "Always dig," she whispered. "Never ask." The ground rumbled beneath her words. The cowboy stood still, hat low, face unreadable. He spoke softly, like to a friend. "They ain't learned." She turned her gaze to him. "And you?" He swallowed. "Still trying to—" The light dimmed, pulsing slower now. The boy stepped forward, shaking. "Please, don't hurt them." The girl looked at him, eyes softening. "You carry her words," she said. He nodded. "She saved us." The girl's form flickered, ash breaking into rainlight. "Then you keep walking." The cowboy stepped closer, tipping his hat. "What happens if they come again?" She looked at the sky, where thunder rolled low. "Then the land will answer louder." A long pause. The cowboy said quietly, "She deserves rest." "She'll have it," the girl murmured, "when men stop digging." She glanced down at the broken shovels, the half-buried rifles. Her expression shifted, grief, then peace. "Until then," she whispered, "I'll wait." The glow began to fade. Her outline dissolved into mist, drifting across the ridge like smoke. The rain softened, steady and cold. The boy looked at the cowboy. "She's gone again." The cowboy holstered his gun, staring at the ground where she'd stood. "No, she's where she's always been." He turned to the frightened diggers. "You tell your bosses this ground's claimed." One man stammered, "By who?" "By what you don't understand," the cowboy said, "and never will." The men ran. Their lanterns vanished into the fog. The boy stood silent. The cowboy rested a hand on his shoulder. "Let's go." They walked until the mountain disappeared behind the mist. The air was still heavy but clean. Halfway down the trail, the boy looked back. "Think she'll be okay?" The cowboy adjusted his hat. "She don't need okay. She's got forever." Thunder rolled once more, distant but low, less like warning, more like a heartbeat slowing down. The cowboy looked toward the horizon, where dawn began to break, faint gold brushing the clouds. He muttered, almost to himself, "Reckon the land don't forget. Just waits until we do." The boy didn't answer. He just walked beside him, small boots marking prints that rain would soon erase. They kept walking. The mountain stood still, veiled in thin fog like a secret sealed again. The earth no longer hummed, but the silence that followed carried weight, not emptiness, but promise. The cowboy and the boy reached the flat stretch beyond the tree line, where grass bent low under fresh rain. The dog trotted ahead, nose to the wind. Neither spoke for a long while. Finally, the boy said, "Do you think she's still there?" The cowboy didn't look back. "She ain't gone, just changed her shape." "Like what?" He glanced at the wet ground beneath their boots. "Like the land. Like wind that remembers faces." The boy nodded, though he didn't quite understand. He pulled the bone charm from around his neck and pressed it into the cowboy's hand. "She'd want you to keep it." The cowboy shook his head. "No. You carry her now. You keep walking straight. Keep listening when the ground talks." The boy slipped it back on. "Will we ever come back?" The cowboy's eyes traced the horizon, wide, endless, golden with sunrise. "Maybe. But not today." They stopped by the edge of a creek swollen from rain. The water moved quick and clean, carrying away the last of the ash and dirt. The cowboy knelt, scooped a handful, and let it fall through his fingers. "Everything ends up somewhere," he said, "but nothing really leaves." The boy crouched beside him. "You think the land forgave us?" He smiled faintly. "The land don't hate. It just remembers." The dog barked once, chasing a bird that rose from the grass. Its cry echoed over the plain, wild, free, alive. The cowboy watched it vanish into the distance, then straightened, dusting mud from his knees. He looked down at the boy. "Time to move on." "To where?" "Where the stories don't end," he said. They walked again. The kind of walking that isn't running away, but toward something unseen. The sound of boots on wet earth, mixed with the faint hum of wind threading through grass, like a whisper of the voice they'd left behind. When they reached the horizon, the boy turned one last time. The mountain was just a faint line now, but in its shadow, something glimmered. Faint, green, alive. He smiled. "She's still watching." The cowboy tipped his hat. Good. Keeps us honest. And then they were gone. Two silhouettes fading westward into the sun. Out here, stories don't end, they echo. If you felt this one in your bones, ride along for the next tale of dust, redemption, and the unseen spirit of the Apache land. Subscribe. The next wind's already stirring.